I think there's so many mothers today that are finding themselves anxious and depressed. I think postpartum depression is the highest that we've ever seen it in the history of the world.
Prior to having kids, my husband and I were financially stable. We were doing good. Everything was fine. And my first had some health problems. She was in the NICU for a little bit. I came home. I felt kind of guilty for feeling this weird sense of like just not being okay. But I was like, I can't be depressed. There are mothers out there who have miscarriages or actual struggles. And then fast forward to my second one, and I still felt off. But again, I'm like, I can't talk to anybody about this because on the outside, looking in, my life is perfect. It wasn't until after my third that I finally came to realization that I was definitely struggling. So I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. I happened to be invited to this leadership conference, and I had this giant epiphany. Lili, nobody is going to come and change your life. Ed McMahon isn't coming with a giant, shiny check paid to the order of self-sacrificing mama. Like, you need to do something about it. No one's going to save you.
This is an interview with Lili Higgins. This was an incredible interview where we talked a lot about motherhood. We talked about her experience having 3 kids under 3, postpartum depression, and some of the things that come with the weight and responsibility of being a mother. We talked about how Lili lost herself at some point and then eventually found herself through fitness and has parlayed that into incredibly positive and raw and real content that she produces on a daily basis and has now amassed a following of over 250,000 people. This was a fun and raw and real episode about motherhood and some of the challenges that women face in their life. Thank you for joining the Rollercoaster Podcast. Strap in for another episode. Lili Higgins, welcome to the Rollercoaster Podcast.
What's up?
Excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So later, at some point, we should talk about how we met, because I think it was kind of funny.
It's a funny story.
It's a very ironic story. So this isn't happening by accident for sure. So you're a mother. Mm-hmm. You have 3 children.
Yep, mom of 3.
And you had 3 under 3, is my understanding, right?
Yes.
I think there's so many mothers today that are finding themselves anxious and depressed. I think postpartum depression is the highest that we've ever seen it in the history of the world. And especially when you have multiple children back to back to back that are really young, I think it can be incredibly overwhelming and lead to all kinds of mental health.
Daunting is a word that comes to mind.
For sure. What kind of mental health challenges or battles did you have when having these 3 children so close together?
Well, I think what was hard, first of all, is that I love my life. Prior to having kids, my husband and I were, financially stable. We were doing good. Everything was fine. You add some kids in the mix, and my first had some health problems, and she was in the NICU for a little bit. I came home after the NICU experience, and I was like, oh my gosh, I should be so grateful that she is doing okay. So I felt kind of guilty for feeling this weird sense of like just not being okay. And so I didn't talk about it. And they tell you like, oh, if you feel a little bit off, go talk to your doctor about it. But I was like, I can't be depressed. I have nothing to be depressed about. There are mothers out there who have miscarriages or actual struggles, mothers that I was side by side with at the hospital that still had their babies there. And I got to come home with mine. So it was just one of those things where I was like, I can't talk about it. I have nothing to be sad about. And then fast forward to my second one, same thing happened. And he was actually in the NICU a little longer. I think total was about 11 days. And that was super stressful and like probably one of the hardest times of my life. But when I came home, he was actually on oxygen still. It was the same thing. I was like, okay, my babies are good. They're safe. We have them here with us. and I still felt off. But again, I'm like, I can't talk to anybody about this because on the outside, looking in, my life is perfect. And I have a happy home and a healthy marriage, and my kids are doing well. It wasn't until after my third that I finally came to realization that I had gone through this and was willing to make some changes. I actually had my last one, I want to say 44 months after my first. So yeah, so I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. And I was definitely struggling. I happened to be invited to this leadership conference where I was feeling guilty for even going. And it was like, okay, I'm going to just pause and I'm going to go to this for a second. And I had this giant epiphany. Like, you know what, Lili, nobody is going to come and change your life for you. Ed McMahon isn't coming with a giant, shiny check paid to the order of self-sacrificing mama. Like, you need to do something about it. No one's going to save you. No one's coming to, deal with your confidence issues, with your self-worth issues, with your body shame issues, any of that. Like, you are going to have to put in the work. And it woke me up. And that's when I started working out, dealing with my mental health, talking to somebody, and kind of just went from there and haven't looked back since.
Amazing. I appreciate you going there. You said something in there that really struck a chord with me, which is like, I can't be depressed. Right. And I think we have these sort of thoughts every day, which is like, I can't fill in the blank. So whether it's a mental health issue or whether it's, I can't start a business, or I can't get in shape, or I can't be the one who changes my family's life or generations forever. Like, it's just, that's not me. Right. So this idea of I can't, like, what does that mean to you? Like, do you think anything is possible truly? Or do you think that, we as humans have limits based on how we were raised and how we were born and our DNA and these sort of things?
I think you come to a point in your life, well, hopefully, because I've gotten to that point, that you realize that you are your biggest limiting factor. Because prior to this, I had every excuse in the book. I mean, 3 kids, 3 and under, that's kind of a lot. My husband was working. We were building a house at the time. We were in a tiny little apartment that was like 1,800 square feet, 1,200 square feet. Like, I don't even remember, but it was 1 bedroom for us and then 1 bedroom for the kids. And we were just crammed in there. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't have the time. I don't have the patience. I don't have the sleep. I'm literally sleepless nights with this newborn. There's no way I can make this happen.
Yeah.
No way whatsoever. But then you do it. And then whether you're tired or whether it's snowing or whether it's raining or whether you had a crappy night's sleep the night before or whether there are outside sources telling you you can't or you shouldn't or you're selfish or like, who do you think you are? Because you're going to get that a ton from other people. But the funny thing is, like, you know what? I get that plenty from myself. Like, I don't need anybody else telling me what I can and can't do because I've been able to surprise myself. And now that I've like pushed my limits, one of the things that I tell myself all the time when I'm like worried about something or don't feel like I can do it, I just do it scared. And then afterwards, I'm like, but did you die? Like, yes, that was embarrassing, or yeah, that was scary, or maybe, yeah, you did fail at that thing that you tried for, but like, did you die? And the answer is no. I have survived 100% of the things that I've attempted. Some have gone amazing and other things have just sucked and crashed and burned, and I've been a complete and utter failure. But you just get back up and try again.
I love this idea of like, we control our emotions, our destiny. We are the masters of our lives, nobody else, right? But on the same token, I think there's another there's a counter argument to that, which is like, well, where does God and like our sacred inner circle come into play? Like people around us that lift us and encourage us and can support some of our goals and dreams, you know, whether it be financially or moral support or spiritual support. If you're trying to, you know, develop a relationship with God, this could be a pastor at a church or a authority at a church kind of thing. So how do you think about that, right, Lili? Which is like, yeah, we at the end of the day control our destiny. Like it's all up to us. We control our thoughts, we control our emotions, we control our words. Everything is up to us. But on the other side, like, what about God? And what about like those people that really do love us and care about us and want to see us succeed?
I think at the end of the day, you definitely have to learn and look inward, because I completely believe that the God I believe in has infinite potential and sees that in me. And sometimes you're not going to be supported by those around you. And I've had plenty of instances in my life where there has been no support, and I've had to like look inward. And I know a lot of people call it like your higher self, but really just try and become the person that I want to be and show up as her. And in those days where I'm like, I cannot believe I did the things that I did, I know that that was God and my higher self.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's going to be days where people are going to cheer you on and going to be like, oh my gosh, what you're doing is incredible. But then sometimes you lose friends when people see you're doing a little better than them or going after things that they're maybe a little bit too afraid to go after themselves, which is hard.
Yeah. One of the things I respect a lot about you, and obviously we don't know each other super well, but in preparing for this podcast, I spent a lot of time on your pages. You have multiple, right? You have like your normal mom life page, and then you have your, you know, fitness influencer page. I think that you have gotten to a place in your life where you are very comfortable in your skin and who you are, right? I don't think that happens by accident. I don't think that happens by chance, right? I think that there's like, you can clearly tell you've done a lot of work to get to that place where you're like, I'm going to just do what I do, and I don't really care what people are thinking, right? And there's a syndrome that's called allodoxophobia, which is also known as the spotlight effect, which is the idea that we as humans believe everybody else has a spotlight on us, and they're watching our every move, and they actually give a fuck about what we're doing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like no one actually cares that much about what I'm doing. They care about themselves. And that's, I think, the way it should be, right? So you've gotten to that point where it's clear that like you're going to be you and only you. And I think that's really impressive. How did you get there?
Oh, years of work, honestly. It's been a lot. So for example, with my fitness page, I have so many people in the DMs like, okay, if I want to put out content, or if I just don't want to give a fuck, or like, what do I do, and how do I become like you, and like you are so fearless, and those messages are inspiring. But I'm also like, girl, it's gonna take a second, but also who cares? Who gives a shit? Because listen, if I put my tripod or my phone up against a water bottle or whatever at the gym and people are like, I would die of embarrassment. Okay, here's the thing. Do any of those men get to come home with me at the end of the day? The answer is no. The only person that I care about, and even he thinks I'm embarrassing sometimes, is my husband. He's the one that I get to go home to and sleep next to every night, put my head on that pillow and like ask how his day was.
Yeah.
And my kids and the people who love me. So yeah, if people look at you and they like, you know, might make some comments, or you might see them whispering in the background, like, do any of those people pay your bills? Do any of those people have your number? Do they go to your birthday parties? Are they there to celebrate your wins? Are they there to help you like go through something hard? No. So like, why does it matter And the thing is, like, yes, it took a long time for me to get there because, believe it or not, I am a recovering people pleaser, which is actually really funny to say now because I'm like, I don't even recognize.
Totally
like I don't even recognize who that girl was. Yeah. But just learning to have boundaries with other people, that was really hard for me once upon a time because I felt like I had to produce or achieve or show up a certain way to get that validation and for like people to like love and care about me. But then I realized like your people will stay with you regardless of whether you produce and achieve. And it had to get to a point where like I was at that all-time low to like look up and see who was still next to me to be like, okay, these are my people. These are the people that I like care about. And like people that can call you out on your shit. I'm not interested in having like yes men around me either because I've had that in my life. And like, I love that saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. One day I woke up and I looked around and I was like, okay, I don't really want this future. And so I changed a lot of things. And it's kind of hard to cut people off out of your life because you really do feel like, you know, they're my friends or my family. I've known this person since high school or we came up together and, you know, I'm not going to be one of those people. Exactly. So like my ride or die, like these are my buddies. And then it comes down to like, okay, how do I feel when I'm around these people? Like, am I having edifying conversations? Are we like talking about ideas or are they just talking about people? You know, it really is the people that you like surround yourself with. And for like the longest time, I was worried about like how I would be perceived. But then you just gotta make that jump. And after you do, you're just gonna be like, I can't believe I didn't do that sooner, because there really is like a night and day difference to like my actual quality of life as a whole.
Yeah. Wow. There was a lot there that I really want to talk about. You know, one of the things you talked about was just the type of, I'm going to just write this down because there's several points in there that I really like, but you talked about certain friends that you have that the majority of the conversation is talking about other people, and usually it's talking shit, right?
Yeah.
And I have this thing in my life now, which is a zero tolerance shit talk policy, period, end of story. It doesn't matter how I feel about somebody else. I'm not going to waste my breath and my energy talking about them, because it's like horrible. It's the worst energy ever, first of all. So like, you don't feel good doing that at the end of the day. And the moment you might convince yourself like, yeah, this makes me feel good because I'm better than this person, and so I'm going to put them down and that's going to make me feel, but like at the end of the day, that's horrible energy. And I think it's I think that actually that type of behavior leads to a lot of mental health issues for sure. So, you know, I was recently, and I won't share the exact experience, but I was with 7 other men, and we were basically sitting around a campfire, and somebody's name came up, and all these men started talking about him, and not in a good way. And those who know me really well know that I do not engage in this, but I am also not shy to say, hey guys, this is not productive. Why are we doing this? Right? And these are 7 other alpha dudes, but it's powerful when you can sit around a group of people and say, let's stop this shit. Like, why don't we talk about something worthwhile? Right? And the first reaction is kind of like, whoa, this is awkward, right? Like, he's kind of busting our balls. But then they know that like, when we're together, if you want to have my time, we don't engage in these kind of activities.
And you are leveling up your friend group by being that person.
For sure. So I want to talk about this concept of circle management. This is what I call it. Okay. So here's how I view it, and I'm curious to get your view. I think about our circle as this. I think about, first, a sacred inner circle. That's the smallest circle. These are the people that you're going to allow all the way into your life. You're going to know pretty much everything about these people. and you're probably going to spend the most amount of time with these people. Okay. And then I think about these circles expanding. So you sort of have like a tier 1 and a tier 2 and a tier 3. But the way that I talk about circle management, who are the people that we allow into our life, is like this. You have to have a rubric for who gets into the circle, who gets to stay in the circle, and then who has to go. And to me, it's chalked up as mutual creation of value for each other's lives. And value can be derived in a lot of different ways, right? Value does not mean financial, by the way. It could, but it doesn't mean financial. It could mean this person makes me feel good when I'm with them. They make me laugh. They're a spiritual confidant. They're somebody who holds information very well. They're somebody who creates space for me when I'm around them. They're somebody who I have fun with, right? So you name what the value is. And over time, if the value creation isn't roughly 50-50, I'm adding as much value to you as you're adding to me.
Oh, I love that.
Over time, sometimes it's going to be skewed. Sometimes you need me more than I need you, right? Then you have to question, is this the right relationship? Because how often are you the one giving because your cup is full, because you have a lot to give, but there's no reciprocation, right? So how do you think about that?
First of all, I love that. And I wish that was a lesson I could have learned in my early 20s because, yeah, that happened quite a lot. But I completely agree. It kind of reminds me of my marriage, for example. There is going to be times in your life where you are giving more from your cup, where that person is a little bit more stressed out. They're a little bit more snappy. They're just having a tough time. And instead of, also meeting them, okay, that person treated me like this, I'm going to treat them like that. It's going to be like, all right, I'm going to give you grace. I know you're struggling with that. And then there's going to be times where it's flip-flops and I'm the snappy one and he's the patient one, But with friendships, definitely, I feel like once upon a time, I took it really personally and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong that I'm not enough for this person to reciprocate? Or like, what could I do more to make them want to? And now I've gotten to the point where you kind of have to realize, and I think, again, the best teacher is, the hard lessons, hard knock life situations where you realize, like, you know what, this isn't worth my time or my effort because I love this person, but you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And I use that a lot in even talking about motherhood. But it totally applies with friendships too, because you need something, you need to fill yourself, you need to prioritize yourself. And sometimes in those relationships, in those situations, you just have to love yourself enough to know that it's not working anymore.
Yeah. I heard this thing the other day. There was a guy speaking on a stage and he said, it takes nothing away from your flame to light somebody else's flame or their candle. It takes nothing, right? I agree with that to an extent, right? The way that I like to think about this analogy is what you said, which is when my cup is running over, when I have excess, my cup is full and now it's spilling out onto the ground. Why not take the spillage and give it to somebody else, right? Instead of letting it just like, man, my life is amazing, it's perfect. It's like in those moments where your cup is flowing, like find areas to give it to somebody else and try to develop relationships where when your peers in that sacred inner circle, their cup is overflowing, they want to give it back to you. So I talk about this concept, which is very simple. It's a simple concept that I think would change the world. And it's this: check in on your people for no other reason than to just check in, right? Most relationships are transactional. So when we think about value, a lot of times we think, well, they have to give me something before I'm willing to reciprocate or vice versa. I think some of the greatest value you can add to your people is when you have a thought about them ever throughout the day, that you just say, hey, thinking about you. How are you? Are you okay? Are you well? Are you good? Right? And then just listen. And I love phone calls way better than text, by the way, because it'll catch people off guard
I
until
do
they're
too.
used to it. Right? Like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hey, what do you need? Nothing, zero. Just checking on you. My friends now are like, oh yeah, it's one of these calls. Cool. You know what? Today I'm awesome. Thanks for the check-in. Cool. Have a nice day. But other times it's like, dude, I really needed this. Like, I'm going through it today. Cool. What else? Tell me more. Oh, dude, my wife and I got into it last night, and it's just time and time again. Okay. What else? What else is going on? Well, we're going to therapy, and we're there. Okay. What else? And I'm never really giving advice. I'm never really like, it's just somebody that they know will create a safe place that's incredibly confidential, that they can open up and share, because sometimes it's all it takes, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I love that because I have a lot of successful friends, like really just doing very well. And some of them have gotten to the point where they are struggling. And I have a friend who was kind of at this crossroads and was like, okay, I feel like I need some growth. And I feel like I need to do this hard thing. But I don't know if this business, opportunity is what I need to be doing right now. But I kind of feel like, I'm a pansy if I don't go for it, or just don't feel like I'm going to measure up if I don't do this. And I was having this conversation and I said, what if growth for you isn't making $1 million a year because you've done that several times? What if growth for you looks like being a little bit more present and slowing down and feeling more connected to family and friends? And I just heard the audible silence on the other side of the phone call. And I think that's one thing where I'm like, I'm at a good place in my life right now, knock on some wood. But I feel it's because I've unlocked that secret. I think that life is about connection and relationships. Because at the end of the day, you could have all the money in the world, but if you don't have anyone to share it with, you're going to be one miserable person. And on the other side of it, you could have really incredible connections and live an incredibly rich life. I heard this story about this Mexican fisherman, and he's fishing and grabs this giant tuna or something. And this American guy comes over to him and he's like, oh my gosh, that thing is huge. That is incredible. Why don't you go out and fish some more? And he's like, well, I take this fish back home and, I cook it for my family, take a little nap, hang out with my wife, watch my kids play on the beach, and then I do it all over again tomorrow. And he's like, okay, cool. But listen, I'm going to invest in you. We're going to get a bigger boat. The guy's like, okay, cool. I'll get a bigger boat. So he gets a bigger boat. And then he's crushing it, doing well. And he's like, all right, now we're going to have a fleet of boats. And this guy, seeing all the success, is like, awesome. I am crushing it. I'm going to get this fleet of boats. And they continue to do this back and forth. And then he has made it. He has fleets of all these ships or whatever you want to call them. And he comes home and the American guy's like, okay, cool. Now that you are going to sell all your boats and all your ships and all your everything, what do you want to do now? You have all the money in the world. He's like, I want to go out. I'm going to catch a tuna. I want to cook it for my family. I want to take a nap. I want to hang out with my wife, and I want to watch my kids play on the beach. And that story just really, I'm getting emotional because it really hits home. You probably have everything you could ever want right now. And it's just shifting that mindset and that perspective to truly appreciating it.
Yeah, that's right. The question is, how do you do that? Right? How do you shift that mindset? Because I was that guy. Maybe I was the American guy, and that's, I don't know. I was one of the
You're
guys.
like, I was in the investor.
I was one of
you
the
know?
guys that was very like chasing the next coin, and it was never going to end until I went through a life event where I almost lost my wife, and meaning she was dead and somehow made it back. Right. And so that was the catalyst to change me. But people ask, like, dude, how do you get to this place where you're not, money's like super low on the totem pole now, and being present in relationships and everything, relationship with God, these things supersede that. So in your opinion, how do you get there? How does somebody really get to that place where they understand that at the end of this life, money and material things are just not going to be the thing that you're remembered by?
I think there's two types of people in the world. I think there's people who can learn from other people's mistakes, and people who have to make the mistakes to learn from them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I am the latter. I definitely had a catalyst in my life where I was like, oh, like this is kind of a big deal. And I do think a lot of people are going to have to go through that and hit rock bottom to get to the point where they like understand the magnitude and the severity of the situation. It might be a death or somebody close to you, you know, something happening with your spouse, a family member, something like that, something to like, that is really jarring and like shock you to your core where you're like, okay, I need to change some things.
Yeah.
Or some people can listen to others and be like, you know what, I don't want that same thing to happen to me, you know? So if you are the smarter of the two, I would say just get to the point where you recognize this. You've heard it enough times from other people, and start making changes. Even if it's putting your phone down, you know, and saying, okay, I don't want to have my phone at meal times. Like it really is crazy. If you look up date night, look up at restaurants, if you put your phones away, my husband's really good at like putting his phone in the truck while we're on date night, and just look up and see how many couples are together, but they're not together.
Texting each other.
Yep. Texting, selfie, FaceTime. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Just as simple as that. Putting your phone down, trying to be present. And I know we can't be present 24/7, but just make little goals for yourself. Like, okay, cool. Dinner time, date night. I feel like I do a really good job when I go hang out with friends. And that's actually kind of a pet peeve of mine when I'm like having a conversation with somebody and they're texting. I'll stop. I'll just be like, I'm like, oh no, sorry, I'm still listening. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you finish.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put that away.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I think there's the next layer to that is, just because you put your phone away does not mean that you're present, right? You might be in the room, but are you actually mentally there? Right?
Yeah.
And I struggled with that for a long time, where I started, I started doing these different tactics that were simple, like put your phone away for an hour during dinner with the family, this sort of thing. But then I still found myself like very much not present. Physically, my body was there, but my wife could be having a full-on conversation. She's like, "Did you hear anything that I just said?" And I'm like glassed over. I'm like, "Oh, what?
Are we all living the same lives?
Oh, what? Sorry." I was thinking about the person I fired this morning, and the person I'm going to have to hire tomorrow, and the investor that just said no, and the thing, and it was just like, it was nonstop. Right. So I think when you realize, another thing that people around the phones, there's a misconception that like things can't wait. And it's like, no, like nothing is that important that it can't wait. Right? The only thing that can't wait is you being fully present for your family. Right? But I promise, the email, you can get to it tomorrow morning, and it's going to be roughly the same or the phone call, you can get to it later tonight when the kids go down or in the morning, like, and it's going to be okay. Right. So I think understanding that nothing is really that urgent except like being fully present with your family. Right.
Yeah. I heard this audio that said 100 years from now, the car that you spent all your money on is going to be at the bottom of some junk heap. The house that you spent so much time building and designing and furnishing is going to be somebody else's, or they're going to tear it down to build a new one. Like the things that you care about, the clothes that you're wearing, the shoes, the cars, the stuff, the people, the ones you want to impress, everyone is going to be gone.
Yeah.
And so like at the end of the day, those things don't matter. It's like, okay, cool. Are they going to tell stories about you? Like, are your grandchildren going to know about you because of the incredible life you lived? And not only how you were, like your character, but like how you made people feel. Because that other saying, like, people don't remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I completely agree with that. There's plenty of times where people have showed up in my life, couldn't tell you what they said to me. They just showed up. They made me feel like I was loved and heard and seen. And that's the type of person I want to be.
Yeah.
You know, just be remembered by like how I made people feel, not how articulate I was with my words or what I was dressed in or how cute my hair was.
It's a great dovetail because first time that we ever met, I was sitting outside of a gym and you were in the same gym. And if I recall, the day before, I was in studio with Janelle, who's been on the show, that was doing...
I think it was actually later that day that you were going to...
Somehow I knew who you were. I don't know why.
Oh, okay. Were
Right?
you getting that tattoo from Janelle the day before? Something like that.
Somehow your name came up like that day or the day before, right? And somehow I had seen your face. So like I knew who you were through Janelle, right? So I'm sitting outside and I think I'm on my phone or something, calling an Uber. And you walk by me and you just say, "Hey, cool kicks." And you just keep walking. Like you didn't stop, you didn't, cool kicks. And like I looked over at you and your back was turned to me, you were walking away. And I was like, was that her? Because I might have saw you, I don't know, I may have saw you in the gym and thought maybe that's Lili. And so I'm like, "Hey, girl, hey."
I do remember. It was an awkward length of time after I had walked away.
Yeah.
You were like, "Hey," and I was like, "I just passed you 30 feet ago."
Like I think it took some time for it to register.
To process.
I'm like, do you know Janelle? Are you like, and you're like, "Yeah, I do." And then we connected, but like, look, it was, speaking of how you make people feel, like you didn't have to say that. You didn't have to say anything. Most people would not say anything. They would just go on about their day. But you are different, right? And so when you notice something cool, like cool shoes, you just say it. And then you carry on about your day. And that made me feel good. Like, hey, she complimented my shoes. We connected. And then for this to come full circle, like I texted Janelle, I don't know, a week or two ago. And I said, "Hey, I've got a couple of available slots coming into Utah. Like, who do you know that would be amazing?" She's like, "You remember Lili from the gym?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I do," because she made me feel a certain way, right? And that's how this all happened. So I think that's a cool dovetail. In July of 23, you said this. You said, "5 years ago, I walked into a gym for the first time and I saw this girl and I said to myself that she would be the metric for all of my goals. Today, I help spot that girl on the shoulder press with a weight that I can easily do." So talk to me about your journey in discovering the gym and starting to actually take it seriously? Because I think there's a lot of people who want to be in shape, but for whatever reason, they're intimidated by going to the gym. It's a time commitment. It takes up, right? So there's all these excuses why we wouldn't go to the gym. How did you sort of break through some of those?
I feel like it goes back to the postpartum depression, and truly and honestly feel like I lost myself. I was doing all of these things for my kids and my husband and other people. And if I told a friend I was going to be at lunch at 12 o'clock, I'm there, 5 minutes early. I show up for my people. But there were plenty of times where I told myself I was going to do things and I didn't show up for the most important person in my life. Me. I am my most important person. And now I can confidently say I am my own best friend because I love me. I prioritize me. I know that I am worthy of putting time and effort into. And it was hard getting to that point. But one day I just was like, you know what? Like I mentioned, went to that retreat and realized that nobody was going to give me all of the things that I've ever wanted. I made plenty of excuses, like when my kids are a little bit older, once we finish building, once I have a little bit more space, all of the things. And I'm like, it's never going to end. Things come up, whether it's work or your spouse or stress or whatever. I decided to prioritize myself. And that's when my life truly changed, because I may have been confident on the outside, just, a bubbly personality that could turn it on whenever. But on the inside, I was screaming. I was wanting to get out. I felt like I was on autopilot. My kids would wake me up, diaper to the face, like pile drive situation. And I would turn on the TV and just roll over and scream in a pillow and be like, okay, I have to do it all over again. And it's sad to retell the story because all those emotions come back. Like I truly was dreading my days. And of course there were moments of happiness where my kids were giggling and making me laugh. My husband would come home and I have, family parties or whatever. But the moments in between, the highlights sucked. And I didn't want that to be my normal. So I told myself I would start going to the gym, not knowing how to do it. A lot of people are like, how do I start? I'm like, you just go. And yeah, it's intimidating. And yeah, I felt anxious and I didn't know what I was doing. But I started on the treadmill. I'm like, okay, I can make these buttons work. I'll start walking. And then the walking turned into running. And then the running turned into losing all the weight. And I thought, okay, once I get to this goal weight, my life will completely change. I will be happy once I get here. And then I realized, oh shit, I'm down to that weight and I'm still not happy. Maybe this isn't just about my body. Maybe it's mental. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is going to the gym is more of a mental exercise than it is, a physical toll on your body. Because every time I show up to the gym, I am proving to myself, I'm showing myself that I'm worth prioritizing and that I can do hard things. And so, those blocks just stack. It's tiny little wins, win after win after win. And now I can confidently say that I've been going to the gym for about 6 years now. But there have been levels where the first level was walking in the gym, being scared, not knowing what I was doing. And then after a week being like, okay, feel a little bit more confident about walking in. I know how to scan the little phone thing and I can get on a treadmill and make it work. And then month 3, you're like, okay, cool. I got to where I wanted to be. Now, what's a different goal? I'd like to go to fitness classes, went to some of those. And then a couple years down the road, realizing I don't want to look like anybody in here. All of us doing this high fitness, Zumba, hip hop stuff, it's fun and we're dancing, but I don't want to look like anybody in here. And the women I wanted to look like were actually lifting the free weights with the men. And I was like, nope, that could never be me. because I'm going to look like a fool and I'm not going to know what to do.
Those women are jacked.
Yeah, they really are. And I'm like, that's can never be me.
Yeah.
But like, I was my own limiting factor, because guess what? I did go to the free weight section. I had somebody show me what to do. Picked up some 5-pound weights that once upon a time felt like they were going to kill me. And now getting to the point where like, yeah, I can shoulder press 35s and I'm pretty damn proud of that. It's definitely a journey. And I think people have it in their heads that like, oh yeah, just 12 weeks to shredded abs. I'm going to change my life. And they don't realize that it's going to be like a lifelong practice.
Yeah. Really well said. So you start lifting, you get the courage to go out and start moving some metal. And at some point you have this thought in your mind, which is like, what if I posted a video online? Like, what would that be like?
Yep.
Right. So where did that come? Where did that initial thought come from?
I think it came from a place of like, one, I'm really proud of how far I've come. But two, I do think it would have helped me so much postpartum, having those 3 babies, 3 and under, hopping on Instagram and being like, okay, she is a normal chick that is trying and failing and doing it all over again. Because I feel like on Instagram, a lot of the times we compare ourselves to these like unattainable aesthetics. And I was like, what if some just random mom from Lehigh, Utah started posting her deadlifts? Like what would happen? Because I am 15 pounds away from lifting twice my body weight, which is pretty badass if I do say so myself. So I was like, what if I could just post some stuff on there? And what if some moms could see that and be like, you know what? If she can do that, that average chick, maybe I could too. Maybe I could start. Because if she's doing it, must not be that hard.
Yeah.
You know?
So at some point you have to actually post the first video, right? Like, what happens if you never post that first video? How is your life different today?
Thank you to our sponsors over at Bucked Up. I love this company. I love their products, their apparel, and their supplements. Recently, they dropped the mother of all pre-workouts, Mother Bucker. This is not for the faint of heart. This will make you want to claw your face off. So don't get stuck in traffic when you're headed to the gym. I love these guys. I love this company, and I love their products. They are clearly the best tasting pre-workout on the entire market, and they're number one for a reason. Bucked Up is my favorite workout brand, hands down. And they also have my favorite apparel for working out and just for daily life. It's Lululemon-like quality, but for a fraction of the price that's affordable. So head over to their site, buckedup.com, where you can check it out. And for 20% off their entire site, use the code TylerHall20.
Honestly, I don't think it would be that different when it comes to like who I am to my core.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of why it's working.
Yeah.
But have I had some cool experiences because of it? Yeah. I mean, I have 2 years worth of supplements in my pantry that I will not be able to get through just from companies reaching out, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that really keeps me motivated to like keep posting is messages that I get.
Yeah.
The DMs from women being like, I never thought I could be strong until I saw you do it.
Yeah.
And those are really like touching messages, or like, I also have 3 kids, or I'm going through it. You talking about you being in the thick of it feels so relatable to me, because that's where I'm at right now. And that's why I do it. That's why I post, and that's why I created a course, because I felt very alone in my journey. And if I could inspire or motivate or uplift even one woman and, you know, shed off some of those years off of their struggle, or months or weeks or even a few days, they start a little bit earlier because of me, like, that's worth it.
Yeah. Did it take you a lot of courage to get that first video out?
I feel like it did, but also like my mentality is just like, fuck it, you know?
Yeah.
But did you die? You know,
So
if I post it
you were
out
already
there.
at that place. Like I'm gonna let this rip, and I don't care what happens. Let's see.
I think you have to kind of be a little bit delusional when it comes to doing that, because one of the reasons I do keep like my personal Instagram personal is because I know people on the internet can be vicious. And I do get a lot of comments on there that, you know, to maybe Lili 7 or 8 years ago would have been super like earth shattering. But Lili now is kind of like, okay, they're going to come and it's going to be okay. But you can say anything about me and I could give a shit.
Yeah.
But if people came at my husband or my kids, I would go full on attack mode. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep that separate because I don't even want anybody to touch that with like a 50-foot pole. Because like you were talking about, the sacred inner circle, like I am not exposing them to what I am exposing myself to. Like it's a whole different ball game. But yeah, I think you kind of have to be a little bit on the crazy side to, you know, start posting shit and just being like, you know what, it's whatever.
So I want to talk about consistency. You seem to be really consistent on your fitness page with posting content, right? So, I talk about it this way with people who ask for advice about creating content online, right? It's like, I think quality is incredibly important. The quote goes like this: quality is king, but consistency is the queen, right? Who's more powerful than the king, right? And so I think, how do you keep up with this? Like, how do you prioritize this in a way? Because the videos you create, by the way, are incredibly creative, and they probably sometimes take multiple takes, and you've got to prioritize this now into your days, right? So maybe talk about like your method of, are you creating content once a week and then distributing it over a week? Are you doing it every day? Is it like, how do you make the magic happen that you're doing today?
Here's the funny part. So after my fitness page started gaining some traction, I feel like people just came out of the woodwork and were like, all right, I need your guidance. Give me all the secrets. What are the steps? What blah, blah. Yeah. And I'm like, honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but if I would have to sum it up, because I want to say it's been the last about 4 or 5 months since I like gained all this traction, and actually started posting consistently. But I would say just create the content you would like to consume. That's what it comes down to me. Because if a post doesn't do well, I'm not sitting over here like worrying about like, what is the algorithm or the metrics or the statistics, or like, I had a friend show me like my account reach or like how many followers or whatever. And there was like a whole section of Instagram that I don't even look at, that I was like, oh, this is cool. 78% of my followers are women. That's awesome. Like, that's good to know. But there was this whole other metric insight situation that I don't ever look at, because I truly just post the content I want to consume. Like, okay, cool. What would Lili 6 years ago, when she was in the thick of it, nursing a baby at 3 a.m., crying herself to, to sleep sometimes because like her husband was working on the house and she had 3 kids, like what would be inspiring or motivating to that Lili? Yeah. And I think that's why, like I said, it's working, because people can resonate with how I felt. They're in the thick of it. And yeah, there's some things that are inspirational, other motivational, other just some like weird challenges I like want to do or put out there. And I feel like a lot of people follow me for like my comedic side, like a funny,
just the pure entertainment.
Yeah, I have like a funny side of me or whatever. But again, none of those are inauthentic to who I am. Yeah. I am just being me and sharing it with the world. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, if I can be proud of that post and I can share it out with the world, it doesn't matter to me if I get, 200 likes or 24,000 likes. It truly is like, at the end of the day, I am proud of like what I'm putting out there, because that's the type of content that I like to consume.
Yeah.
So if anyone's struggling with it, like, oh yeah, I need to do the funny things, or I need to do this things, you need to be you. If you're funny, then be funny. If you're not funny and you try to do some funny shit online, like, people are going to be like, sorry, dude, but it's not translating,
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to find what works for you. But I really do think just getting inspiration from the content you'd like to consume.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because I think one of the most crowded creator categories today is fitness, right? There's millions of creators that are trying to create content around fitness today. But the way that you're doing it is, yes, it is incredibly you and it's incredibly authentic, but there's also enough of a mix of entertainment value, this comedic side, with educational value, with also like inspirational value, right, around mothers that may be struggling, right? And so I think you've like really, like you've really found a great niche, and it's clear that you're on this insane rise, right? And it feels weird when you go from not creating content to all of a sudden having lots of people follow you and having this big brand and stuff. Like, I still feel uncomfortable with that too. It's like, yeah, I'm still the same exact person.
Oh,
like,
I am so awkward.
I'm not like different at all.
When people come to me at the gym, like, don't you have a famous Instagram account? I'm like, first of all,
please
ew,
don't say that.
They're like, oh, you're that influencer. And I'm like, no. But also, I have to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to own it. But I think I just have some like trigger words where I'm like, I don't feel like an influencer.
Yeah, don't put me in that bucket.
Don't put me in that lane. But also, like, I do not feel like I'm famous. It's not. I don't.
A weird thing.
I don't like those words. But at some point, you just got to own it. Like, yeah, I do put on, some funny stuff online, and I'm glad you relate to it and we can have a conversation, and it's good that way. But the first few times I was like, please don't, ew. Like, it's really.
And you still can't have my number, and I'm still going home to the same person, and
it's still weird. Oh no, but like, that's another question I get a lot. Like, how does your husband feel about all this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, honestly, it's probably the best thing that has ever happened to my marriage. Probably apart from therapy, if we're being completely honest, because I do get a lot of messages, and it's sad, like having messages from people with like families in their profile picture.
Yeah.
It just makes me a million times more grateful for what I have at home.
Totally. Lili, this was an honor. I loved this conversation. Thank you. I want to wrap with this. I want you to look into this camera, okay? And I want you to talk to I have so much like just respect and empathy and love for the mothers out there. I've watched my wife bear 4 children. And I know what it takes. It's a lot. So what advice would you share just for, the mothers out there that may be going through it, maybe struggling?
I would say to prioritize yourself. That taking time for yourself isn't selfish. It's the opposite of that, actually. They tell you on those airplanes to, put that mask on first, and then you can help other people, because you're not good to anybody if you're passed out. That's how I feel like motherhood is changing. We are finally getting to a point where we realize I have to help myself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, I need to be that confident person. Because how are we supposed to teach our kids to be confident and love themselves if we aren't? I feel like you have to be the person you want them to become. And once upon a time, I was the farthest thing from what I wanted my kids to become. And I did not want my daughter to grow up to be a different version of her mom. And that's what made me change. I decided to love myself, prioritize myself, and ask for help. A lot of the times you think you can do it by yourself, but girl, you can't, and nobody's asking you to. A lot of those things came from my internal dialogue. Like, my family needs me to self-sacrifice, but they never ask me for that. They want me to be happy. They want you to be happy. Just ask for help. Go do the things that fill your cup. And like we spoke about, like, your cup will spill over, and your children, your husband, your friends, everyone in your life will be better for it.
Lili, thank you for joining the Rollercoaster Podcast. That's a wrap.
Thanks.